Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Cheryl from Tinker's Cart Art, and maybe you saw my little post from this morning when I was walking on the beach that I seem to not ever get tired of beach paintings. So I thought I'm going to paint a few little beach paintings this morning, and I thought I would invite you guys along for the ride. So we're going to do some little rectangular canvases. They're tiny little gallery wrap canvases. They're really fun, and I'm going to turn my camera down in a minute. Hi Patty, I'm going to pull you up on my laptop as well, so if you have any questions this morning, just post them there and I will answer them. So let me get you on there so I can see your questions. How about you guys? You like to paint ocean too? Hi Annie. You love the ocean as much as I do. We both are pretty lucky to be close to the ocean. So anyway, hey, there I am. So any questions, pop them in. So I am in southern Maine right now at my summer place. Good morning, Eric. And it is in Wells, Maine. And I have a beach I love there. There's many beaches here in Wells. You know what? I did this video last time with this stupid thing hanging from my hat. Sorry, it kind of bugs me. Hang on. There. And Drake's Island is my favorite beach. It's hidden away a little bit. And Wells Main Beach is on the other side, and in the middle is the entrance to the harbor. So there are two jetties there, and I like to paint those jetties. I have one, actually an older painting I did here for one of my paint nights up here, and it's a picture of the jetty and the water. But we're going to do some little ones today. So I like to do these paintings with the jetty because they're recognizable, and I have a little shop up here that I sell some of my paintings at, and I'll put those up and people love them because they are recognizable to their summer vacations and things. Hey Lois, hi, thanks for watching. I'm going to pull the camera down. Perhaps I won't be upside down for a change, but if I am, I will rotate. You guys will let me know, and we will get to painting. I haven't really planned this. I've pulled up some pictures on my iPad. I've done these paintings a lot, so I think we'll just kind of jump in. I sketched a few little things on there. One, we'll do a little pathway. Hey Karen, good morning, with some beach roses, which might be different. And we'll do one nighttime scene. And I have a photograph that I like that's very different, and it's got more of an orangey, I don't know if it's early morning or sunset, but I don't know. Let's play around with it. So you're on with me to experiment with some paintings. Hi Patty. Let me turn this down and so you can see my setup here. So let me get it so you can see. I'll pull the paintings down closer when we're working on them. I know there's 4 little canvases there. So, and yes, I am upside down, aren't I? As usual. So let me switch you around. You guys are good and patient for my craziness here. Maybe someday I'll get it right. Anyway, little gallery wrapped canvases. I found these the other day. I've done the little square ones before. But these are little rectangles. And I like because they're gallery wrapped, but they're thick. So they're like little chunks of canvas, which are so cool. You don't even need to put a back. You just, if you want to hang them with a little push pin, you can. I sometimes just stack them up. You can put them on the mantle. They're really fun. And I got them at Michael's in a Hobby Lobby. Michael's probably has them too, in a package of 4. So they're really kind of fun. And I'm going to paint them all at the same time because I'm going to be using a lot of the same colors. My palette for the oceans, you've seen it before probably. Very basic, a primary green, a primary blue. Could be called primary blue and green, or it could be ultramarine. This is phthalo. Just look for a nice primary blue and green. Same with yellow. It's a primary yellow. I have a primary red today, only because we're going to paint some beach roses. I do like ivory for my sand color, but you can certainly mix it if you need to. You could just mix a tiny bit of a yellow and a brown, maybe in your white. You can get a shade that you like. I know the real beach is more of a gray-brown sand. I tend to paint a little more colorfully. I like it more whimsical, so I tend to go for an ivory, and I use this yellow ochre color. I just like the way it pairs with the waves and the watercolor. Black and white, pretty simple palette today. So we are going to put that aside here. So I think what I'm going to do, I know you mightn't see the sketching very much, but this is going to just be a beach path. So we're going to put a sky in. I do very basic skies, super quick little clouds. You may have seen my cloud tutorials on the page. Very simple, we'll do them today. And then on the edges here, we're going to put the sand in the middle and then some little grasses and some beach roses. So that's going to be that one. One of these, I've got both, oops, as I spill my water here, I've got both sides of the jetty. So, because I was walking this morning on the Wells Main Beach, and on that side, the jetty is looking this way. where I usually go to Drake's, it's on the side there. It's just that these two jetties are here. The boats come into the marina in the middle. I'm going to paint one as a nighttime scene so you can see what that looks like. And this one is just, all I have is a horizon line on there. I'm going to try something with a peachy sky and some peachy reflections in the water. That's totally an experiment. So you guys will see, you know, how I sort of wing it sometimes. And you know what? Sometimes it works and sometimes it does not. But it's always fun to be painting. I always say the joy is in the process. The joy is in the process for me. I just love to sit down and create. And, you know, we all don't always love what we come up with. But you know what? For the most part, let it sit a day or two. Keep your eye on it. You can touch it up and change it. Most of the times when you go back to your paintings, you really do love them. Okay, so again, I got my comments here. If you guys have any comments or questions as I go, please just pop them in there and I'll try to look over too and address those. Okay, I'm going to start with some skies. Since I got a night sky here and I've got two daytime skies, this is going to be the orangey one. We'll do that a little separate. I'm going to pull out a couple paper towels here since I spilled most of my water on my paper towels. I always like to keep a couple paper towels separate to dry my brush off. You'll see I do a lot of dry brush techniques and things. So let's jump in and do a few skies just to start so you can see what my little daytime sky looks like. And I know I've told you before, but I do like, for my ocean paintings and landscapes, these white bristle brushes. They are more for oil and acrylic painting. They are stiffer, they've got some body to them, and I like the way they dig into the little crevices of the canvas. I like the way they move my paint around for waters and skies and grasses and things. They are a bright, which means a long-handled brush. They are a filbert, which means they are rounded on the top rather than square. I have them usually in 3 sizes. A few of those if you could, or one just bigger one you're gonna just to try out. I think you'd like it. And then I just have my little synthetics flats and rounds here as well, which I'll use for the details and the smaller bits and pieces. So let me pull some of those out here. I jumped on so quickly this morning because I was believe it or not, I was working out. I had a walk and a workout, and I have to tell you, am I the only one during the time that we all were at home and had plenty of time to exercise, did nothing but eat Oreos? Okay, so I'm going to take one of these littler brushes, the ones I just showed you, and I always do my skies like this. I start with a little blue, go right into my white. I'm not mixing up a perfectly blue, you know, a perfect blue shade. I like it when it's a little of both, just barely mixed. And this sky is going to be a little bright. We've got the beach roses we're going to do. So I am just going to brush on that color. But sometimes I dip into just the blue. Sometimes I dip into just the white. I don't want it to be the same color the whole way across. I want it to change a little bit. And I know I've told you, if you're not sure of what your color looks like, try it on your edge first. If you like it, then you kind of work with those that mixture. And I do paint my edges as I go. I'm going to do that later. I'm not going to have you take the time to watch me paint edges. That's a good place to test paint if you need to. So you can see I'm going a little bit light, a little bit dark. Sometimes if I know where I want to put some clouds, I will, and you notice I'm drying my brush off just to get the extra blue paint, go right into the white. And sometimes I'll start those clouds in there now. Very subtle, you hardly see them. But when it dries and we build up the brightness, it really looks more natural than painting a light blue sky and then popping a big, you know, puffy cloud in there that looks like it's pasted on. I want it to blend a bit. Over the white of the canvas of my sky section for now. I'm going to let it sit a second, and then I will go back and I will make my clouds a little bit more noticeable. And I'll show you that technique, but let's let that dry the teeniest bit. Now, I'm going to hop right over to, let's do this one as the daytime sky. Same thing, little blue into my white. I use a little crisscross stroke. You can use a circular stroke. I just want you to avoid doing back and forth, which is great for water, but for our sky, we want it to be a little bit blended and a little bit random, and I don't want to see back and forth brush strokes. I've done my light blue up here, and you can see it's a little lighter and darker in some spaces, but I know I want to do a big cloud here. So what I'll do is dry that blue again off my brush, take a little white, and can you see how it's blending with that light blue without even trying, because it's wet, because I'm working fairly fast. If I took my time and did it exactly perfect, and let's face it, there's no perfect, this blue would dry, you'd be putting your clouds on like this, and it would be a very stiff, solid edge. I want it to be really light and blended a bit. And so I'm going to finish a little bit more white. Then I'll go back into some of the blue. There is a little thing at the end of these jetties that has the little reflectors on them for the boats coming in, and I don't know what they're called, but I'm painting right over it because I know where that's going to be, and I will just go on and do it with a little brush or a paint marker after. So I've got my blue down here. I'm barely up into the clouds. I want to keep a dry brush. Both paints are wet. With my dry brush, I'm softening it in. I always like the bottoms of my clouds to be really soft and blended and go right into the background. I like a little harder edge on the top. But for down here, if you could do it fairly quick while your paint's wet and just blend it in, that would be great. I'll bring my horizon line down a little bit, and then I'm going to go into my water. This is going to be a night sky over here. I'll do that in a minute. This one's a whole other animal, so we're going to try that a little bit after. I'll put that to the side. Let's work on these guys first. When I'm doing a sky and I have some ocean that I can see, I use the same brush. Dry it off. I do my ocean. I start my ocean pretty much the same way usually. A little of this blue, a little of this green blended, not perfectly. I will see what it looks like when I get it on my canvas. So we have a little bit of ocean peeking out here where this path is going to be. Can you see how simple that was? Both of the colors, just with my brush back and forth, and you can almost, because of the translucency of the paint, you can almost see little lines in there already that look like waves. All I'm going to do, it's very little, it doesn't need a lot of detail, it's in the background, dry off my brush. I might take a tiny, tiny bit of white. I might streak some little bits of white here and there. Not much, you're not going to see much for waves back there. Might see some waves breaking down here, so let's take a little white. And let's just blend it in, because again, we're working quickly and we can really work with our paints when they're wet to blend. I'm sort of just blending that in a little bit. See how that softens it? I'm going to rinse my brush off now. I want to get that little sand section in there now while this little bit of white is wet, so that I can take my ivory color, blend it with that little wave that's breaking, and it will look like that. I'm not going to go right on top of it yet. I'm starting below it. I'm just going to softly work it up into the sand, and that is all. I'm not going to touch it again. That's going to be enough. My path is going to get a little narrower here and be wider, but I can cut that off when I go and do my grasses and beach roses. I do want to, and these are teeny, so there's not a lot of detail, but if I'm doing a bigger painting, I would do more of this, but I don't want to leave that just ivory. I will go in there now with a little white. Just brush it here and there so you get a little bit of light and dark. And for the darks, I'm going to go into, and can you see my, let's see, can you see my palette there? My palette's right here. And I am going to take a little bit of this gold color as well. Blend that in. Just lightly here and there. When it dries, I can come back and give it some more highlights if I feel it needs it. So that's just a little bit of a sky, a tiny bit of ocean, and the pathway. And I did it pretty quick, and all the paint really is still wet. And I like to work sort of fast that way so that we can get the blending in. You know what I think I will do while it's wet is take where my shadow is going to be for my path. I got a little picture over here I'm sort of going by. I'm going to have it a little shadow there. So I am going in extra dark with that gold, because I'm going to mix that in with my greens as we get some grasses back there. So because it's nice and wet, I can blend it. I don't want a harsh line on my path, so I'm going to just maybe drag that in a little bit. It'll look like a little bit of a shadow. I am always drying off the excess paint. I don't want too much. Got little hairs coming off my brush, and I'm just lightly feathering, barely touching the paint with the brush, lightly feathering it in there. So that I'm going to leave, and we will go back to that in a little bit. So let's go down and move and work on this one a bit. This is the one where we have a bit more ocean, a bit more waves, and our jetty. Since I have sand color on my brush, I am going to just fill it in down here. And if I wasn't doing this live for you guys, I would do my edge at the same time. I'm not going to worry about that yet. There's just a little sand showing here. And again, like on this guy, take a little white here, just kind of dab it in. I'm going to put a little bit of the gold here and there, maybe where the, under where the waves are going to come up. But that is enough, just the tiniest bit peeking through, so that's enough of that. And for my water, I'm doing the same thing again. I'm going to take a little of both of these colors, mix them, and we've got the jetty here, so we'll have some waves breaking on the jetty. We don't really see the horizon line except for back here, and it just comes up over the jetty a tiny bit, and I get it as straight as I can, but it is not perfect by any means. I'm not worried. You can see I've got a little more of the green here, a little more blue in some spaces. I like that, and I'm using my strokes back and forth so that the texture of the paint just lends itself to looking like water. I drag a little white in here and there. Now, if you're more comfortable going to one of your flat brushes and dragging, you can, or a small round, if you don't want to use a bigger brush, you can certainly take your white on a little flat brush and streak that across. Back here, you are not going to see much for waves. We'll see a little bit breaking on top of the jetty, which we'll do afterwards, but for now, you can just do some little lines if you like. I like to, actually I'm going to switch to my smaller brush now. I like to put, where a wave is breaking, I like to use this lime green. So look, I'm going to mix up kind of a lime green, just a little yellow with my green. I'm going to put a little white in there. It's kind of that color, and I do exaggerate it, that you see underneath waves when they're breaking. So I am going to put a little bit of that here. Say we'll have a little wave turning here, coming up, a little bit of that. And I love this green so much, I'm going to even maybe streak a tiny bit back here, just here and there. If you look at it like this little piece, and I say, it's a little bright, I like bright, but that's a little bright, just soften it in. Now we're going to go in with some of our white and make some of these waves. I'm simply using white paint, the chisel edge of my brush. I'm starting a little thinner with the chisel edge. I start and stop. I press a little more where I want that wave to be curling over. I keep reloading as I need it. I picked up a lot of the green blue here, so I put more fresh white on my brush. And it's as simple as that. I will come back and maybe brighten that up. It's going to sink into that paint and not be as bright as I'd like. But that's the stroke I use. I sort of start, press a little bit, and we need a little more blue down here to mix this in with. Let's get a little more of that light blue. It's going to be much lighter as it comes up on the sand here, so I don't want it too dark, but I want a little more blue under that wave. I think it needs it. Down here, it's going to get very light. I'm going to go with just white. Can you see how I'm dragging my brush kind of through the sand, so it's sort of blending a little bit? It's right, that little thin, translucent part of that little bit of water that's coming up on the sand there. I've got a little blue streak there, so I'm just going to, because the paint's wet, I can just work it right out. I might want it to be like, how it comes in ripples sometimes. I can do this. Working wet in wet like this is similar to working in oil paints, which I do love. You have that time to blend. I really enjoy that, so I work quickly to do that. But if you find that you're just beginning and you can't work as quick as I am, there is extenders, like a medium you can use to mix with your acrylic paint, and it just extends the time that you are have to blend and whatnot. So that's kind of a good thing to have too. So that's really all we need to do there. I'm going to put a little bit more blue down in my waves. I want a few more little waves here. And sometimes we'll take a darker blue to just go underneath where that wave's curved. And then I just go back and forth, whatever I think it needs. Might want a little more green here. Another little wave back here, perhaps. And that is all. That's what I do for that. This is pretty contrast, that dark and light. I'm going to soften that a bit. And if it gets too light, remember, you can always go back with just blue or just green or your mixture and add a little bit, lines just with the chisel edge or your fine liner or, a round a detail brush or your liner brush. So I have one here, I think. I can show you. Let's see. There's liners that, I know I have it somewhere, but I don't. I will, oh, here it is. You know, a long liner like this, you can always get a nice, thin, long stroke with. Okay. So I am going to this is how I do my production line painting. So you're welcome to come along and watch. This is going to be a night sky. So for a night sky, I'm just going to use, I have the brush handy, I'll use that brush. Just your dark blue. That's like an ultramarine, like I said, or a phthalo. Again, I know where my little guy's going to go there, my little, what are they called? Does anybody know what those are called? They have a name, I'm sure. That's the top. This is going to be my Jetty. This is my horizon line. This is just the dark sky. And it's translucent. The paints, the acrylics, the craft paints are very translucent sometimes. And if you needed a solid coverage, just let it dry well. Put another coat, or another coat too, but let it dry really well first, because otherwise you're just taking off what you put on. I kind of like the look of this where you can see through it a bit. I'm going to leave that go because I'm going to spatter this with some stars, put a little moon in there. Again, it's just a whimsical little painting, and I like the way that looks because I'm texturing it with my brush. If I was doing this, it would be too streaky. It would work well for the water though. So since I have this brush, you can use, like I said, I like the bristle brushes, but I've got this in my hand, so to show you how both of them work, I'm just taking the blue and green again. I am going right across the horizon line. I'm using that back and forth stroke. Now this is looking a little too blue to me, so I'm adding a little more green. This is going to come into some waves on the sand here. Takes a little longer, I'm finding, with this brush. I like my big bristly brush. It sort of speeds things up, but I want to show you both. Can you see how this one is a little struggle to fill all those little dots, the little texture of the canvas in? What's good about the bristle is that it really digs right in pretty quickly for you. But if you just have these brushes, feel free to use those. My water's coming in at an angle here, you can kind of see. That's why it's that shape. I'm going to take a little white sometimes. Just for some little, actually it's going to be curving this way too a little, so it's going to be a weird kind of an angle, but we're going to do this, kind of blend it out. And down here I'm going to do the same thing with that greeny color for some waves. Just here and there. I just like getting some of that color into my oceans. And I'm working kind of quick now again because I want to get this sort of blended into the sands while the paint is wet, which means I get very light down here. So I'll get my brush with white on it. I'm going half into the whites, just here and there, and some of this gold, just to, can you see how it just adds a little something? I know this isn't actual sand color like I mentioned, but I like it. It's bright and cheery and warm, and I like the way it goes with the other colors that I use for my beach scenes. So I am just going to soften that along there. And now I can sort of just blend. I'm going to take a little white to use just to sort of blend that. So it looks a little bit more like the water coming up on the sand. Whenever I find I'm getting too much of a color, just dry your brush off, start again, just soften it with the dry thing. And I think I'm not going to do any big waves like that. I think I'm going to have this more coming in this way. So I'm just going to take the dry brush, taking a little white on my corner of my brush, and maybe just doing this kind of. So I've got just white on the corner of my brush, and I'm just sort of touching it down, making it a little curvy and wavy, and just bringing it in and out there. I like that look. It's just a little different than the other waves that we had, so you can bring it in even a little further. You know, some comes in a little further. Perfect. Alrighty, so we have everything but our, let's finish these two. We have everything but our Jetty. So a good way to do rocks, I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to do rocks. And you know what I need to do is just get a little brown paint out. I neglected to bring the brown paint. Put a little brown in there. These are such tiny little paintings that you do not need a lot of detail on those rocks. I would just use these little colors. I like to have a small flat sometimes, about the size of the rocks I'm painting. Like this little guy, this little tiny brush, but it works well. And so my rocks are going to be as simple as this. I'm going to take some brown, and I'm going to use black and white. But can you see I'm taking this little square brush? It's about the size of a rock, and I'm pretending I'm just painting rocks. Some go this way, some go this way. Just dab them in for now. We can get a little more detailed at the end, but for now we're just doing this. And I'm doing the same thing on this guy. This is just a little jetty, so it's like kind of straight along here, and it kind of curves into the water here. After it's dry, we'll put the little waves that come up against it. But just get in some brown, then get in some black, and then we can use grays and little red or orange or just some other colors, blues. You may not see those colors all in your rocks, but I add them just to make it a little bright and interesting, and you'll see how it helps at the end. So now I'm just getting, might be a little darker down towards the bottom, so let's get a little darker there with our black. Again, I'm making little rock shapes with my brush. I'm not going to worry about covering every bit of that canvas. Some of the white showing through would be fine. And again, just little shapes. Sometimes they go this way, sometimes this way. If this was a really huge painting, you'd need more detail in your rocks, but for this, you do not really need that. Okay, now I am going to take a little dark blue. Just dab that here and there. See, kind of add a little pizzazz. Doing all the darker colors first. I will go in with some light shades too. I've gotten some little blobs of paint here as I go. I'm taking just a brush with just water to kind of pick those out, and I can always touch up what I need to. I'm going to put a cloud in that sky, so we'll fix that little dot. All right, so little dark bits first. And now just dry your brush off. Don't go into my water unless I really have to, or I'm done with painting with that brush. So I'm going to take some lighter colors now. Let's take a little of the tan, the little ivory. Same strokes, little kind of rectangles. Sometimes it's a little curved one. And it's turning grayish and brownish, and that's fine. That's what I want. I'm just going to give it some little. Remember the scale. Some of those got a little big. We wanted to have them a little smaller. And remember, you're just looking at this from a distance. It's going to just have the appearance of rocks. It doesn't have to be individual rocks. Maybe a little bit of white. Same thing, just here and there. And you're almost mixing, because these colors are all wet, you're kind of mixing your grays as you go. You don't have to mix gray ahead and use them for your rocks. You are getting that by just adding that white to it. Okay, just enough. It's just enough to give you the appearance of the rocks. You can go back in with the little brush we were using for the waves. You would want this to be dry, but I'm going to try it anyway, and you could make waves breaking up, onto they would be splashing against the side. They would probably be, kind of splashing off here a little bit. You can make them do that. At this point, if you think you need a little something in your water, you could add some little lines. And there you have it. So you've got your beach. This is our nighttime scene. So what I'm going to do, I maybe should have done this first before I painted my rocks, but I want to show you the technique. So let's jump in and do it anyway. I use an old toothbrush to spatter stars in my sky. It's just an old toothbrush, a little water. I've taken my white paint and kind of smushed it a little bit. And I'll get rid of these guys because I don't want them to have stars. And then you just spatter. Kind of cool. And you would do it first maybe before you had to worry about it being on your water, but I'm just going to lightly wipe them off. I like them on my Jetty. I don't mind them. I use that spattering technique a lot of times if I'm doing flowers or landscapes, and on the bottom I give it a little spatter. It just is kind of cool. So that is that. This blue is dry, almost. So I am going to show you how I do my moon. It's super simple. It couldn't be easier. If it was a big painting, I would use one of my little brushes like this because I like the texture. But this is little, so we're going to just use our little round. And it's going to be a yellow moon, which means yellow is super transparent. If I did yellow on here now, I'm gonna put it over here. Look, you wouldn't see it. It looks green. So I'm gonna paint my moon all in white first. When it's dry, I will put yellow over it. Simple technique, and for my sons, I do it the same way because I like whimsy, and I just take a little bit of white on my brush. I pop it on there, and I just spiral out. And when I get towards the edge, it's sort of, the paint is just really thin and almost off the page. And that is my little moon. It will be yellow when I go back over it. And then for your, like, you could leave this as a seam, but if, like me, you had that little thing at the end with the reflectors, you could do it with your paintbrush, or you could do it with a paint marker. Paint markers are pretty cool. This is just a little paint marker. They really have paint inside, so unlike a Sharpie, they have a little texture. They are paint-like. And I just draw that little guy in there. You don't want to use this on paint that's wet. Your tip will get immediately ruined. So that's why I'm going to hold off and not paint, because my stars are wet. But you could do it with this little marker. Pretty simple. I'll just put it in real quick with my paintbrush. And like I said, this is just because it's specific to my beach. It's not probably something you would have on yours. You wouldn't have to add that little structure, but you could if you wanted. And it's just got a couple of lines, and it's got these little reflectors on the top. I did it in black, and I know it was not going to show much, but it's night, so what I would do is just maybe give it a little highlight with some white. Come back later, maybe add the yellow to that so that it sort of glows a little bit. Has a little red and green reflector thing on the top. Again, that's just because that's my beach and that's what people seem to like up here, so I do sell quite a few of these. So I'll add that little reflector. But that gives you the idea, and we'll touch up that moon in a minute. This is the daylight one, and it's dry, so I can show you the technique to use the marker. It's this little structure at the end. It's just a couple of lines, in the middle, and then it's sort of divided with X's like this. And then on the top, it's just got a couple little reflector things. And I will just make some red and green there. To show you how I finish off my clouds, you could use either your flat or this bristly brush, which I like. And I just take white on the corner, regardless of the brush I use. It's just white on the corner. I pat it off a little bit. And across the top of the cloud is where I want them to be a little brighter. I don't do anything underneath. I just here and there make the tops a little brighter. It's a simple, quick way for clouds, and especially on a little painting like this. I'll do one here to cover my little blob. And then you can come in front if you want to make some that are in front. But you can see how my bottoms are always softened into the background. You could, if you wanted, the teensiest bit of yellow ochre. Not really the yellow, but the yellow ochre. Tiny bit. Sometimes I put a little in just because it's a little sunshine in my cloud. It doesn't have to be everywhere. It could just be in a few spots. Then you could go back. This one is pretty much done. But remember I told you how the paint sinks in sometimes? I would go back with some fresh white now and just kind of get it a little brighter on the top of some of my waves. I'm doing this very haphazardly. I don't want you to be struggling and painting a perfect line. Just dot, skip, just get some little white caps in there wherever you think it needs it. I just mostly look and see if there's an area that needs a little something. And then back here again, you could do some little lines if you need it. It could be light blue, they could be light green, they could be whatever color you like. I didn't really like that, so I'm gonna wash that away. So anyways, that's another little one there. So we've got a little nighttime guy, we've got that daytime one. This one's still wet, so we're gonna wait to put our moon. This is gonna be our pathway. Let's finish up that cloud, just like we did a minute ago. You can see me do it again. Little white, corner of the brush, across the top. And that's my little secret. I like to do a little bump, another little bump, and then straight out. I know it's formulated, and you can vary it. Of course, you don't want them all the same, but sort of similar. Very bright on the top, softened in the bottom. Some could be just little, flat, but you still want to have a little thinner, a little heavier, and a little thinner to end. The water, I'm going to add just a little bit here, so it's like a little waves coming just at the shore. And now for our greenery and our roses. Let's just get some greenery in there. And while that dries, we'll try our experimental little orangey sky here. So, some greens. And I'm just going to pop greens in to cover the white of the canvas for now. I love this dark phthalo green with this yellow. It's really pretty shades of green. And I'm just going to kind of dab some in here. That's a little bright, but as usual, I take some of the dark as I go by itself. And if you need a real dark, just mix a little of that blue in with it. We'll make it a little darker towards the bottom here. I'm going to want a little of this gold over here where it's going to blend with our path here a little bit. Got a little more goldy there. What I try to think of when I'm painting is I know I want this whole area green, but if I went in there and painted it all green, the same shade, it would be very boring. So from the beginning, from the start, I tried to vary the shades. Lights, darks, doesn't have to look exactly like the scene you're looking at. You have artistic license. You can change that up a little bit to make it more interesting to the eye. So I've got dark down here, got a little gold by the path. Now I'm taking yellow and some white and getting it lighter up here. You can bring a little of light gold in. Say it's those little long grasses that kind of occur, you see waving in the breeze at the beach. We'll put that at the top. It's all kind of off the top of my head because I do love to paint the beach and I've done it bunches, so. And I just want to blend it a little bit, and I want it just a little blended so it doesn't look like harsh lines of dark and light. Pretty basic. Dry off your brush if you'd like. We don't want a harsh line. You wouldn't see the foliage or the plantings in a harsh line here across the top. Take your brush and just make it a little bit jagged. Sometimes when you're in the paths, you see them kind of leaning over like that. Start at the top with just your dry brush. I'm cleaning it off as I go because I'm collecting paint on there, and I want the dry brush feel and look of that. And you could just be doing this all the way down, just to give you a start for when we go back to actually do the plant, the grasses and the beach roses. I want something light, that light goldy color at the top here. I have an idea for that. And you would like to work from the top to the bottom because that's how the plants are growing. If you started here, for instance, right, and then worked your way up, you're cutting the top of all those plantings off. You wouldn't have this nice, the way they're overlapping there. All right, so some of these are coming over here. They can go different directions. They don't have to all be that way. And now, I'm going to leave that dry, then I can go back over it. But I want to do something where this is so harsh here. It will be a little harsh, but let's take just some of the gold that we had used under here, a little sandy gold color. And I want to just kind of butt up against it and soften it. That line was bothering me. I'm just going to soften it along here. So all I used was a little bit of the white and that, ivory, the sandy color, and that little bit of gold, and I'm softening just along where that meets. And I like the way we've got this little shadow here of our path, but I want to make it a little more interesting. I've got, really just see the ivory, and I don't see my white too much, and I just see a lot of that shading. So I'm taking my ivory color, and I'm going to I'm dabbing it and coming in to these shadows a little bit, just so it's not so perfect. And maybe a little white. That's pretty heavy, but so it almost looks like it's been walked in, or footsteps are through there. Putting it a little bit more dark. So it's just a matter of darks and lights. When you're looking at it, your eye is pretty interested in following around what's going on instead of a sandy path, all one color. So that's that. We're going to let it dry. Let's have some fun. Let's try. I don't know what I'm doing with this one yet, but I just wanted to quickly do some sort of different sky because I'm always doing the night and this one here. I want to do something a little bit different. So let me just jump in with one of my brushes. And let's see. I like this one. Not that it's a big difference. And I'm going to put like an orangey peach color down here. Let me see what I can mix with my palette here. Let me grab another one that's a little cleaner and just move some of these colors over. I'm going to make an orange. So I've got some yellow and red, just your primary. Make it up an orange. Don't want anything that bright, really. So we're going to tone that down a bit. I'm going to try using my ivory color. I want more of that kind of a look. That's kind of cool, right? Let's try it. So this is going to be sort of like a little sunsetty sky. That's a little even bright than what I wanted, but I wanted a little bit pinker at the bottom. Maybe a little pinker here. And I'm working fast on purpose because I want to be able to play with this color. I don't really know what I'm doing with it yet, so I want to be able to change it and add and take away without having to paint over. And I really want it to go into more of a peach color up here, the ivory color, not white. So I'm not using white really. I'm going to use the ivory as my light. Do I want a tiny bit of gold? I don't know. Let's try it. Let's try it. That's that. Oh yeah, I like it. I like it. Okay. And can you see how easy it's blending for me? And don't worry if you're working on this and you're not familiar with the colors and you don't like it. If it's wet like this, wipe it right off with a paper towel and start over. Not a worry. I'm going to put some water here, but it's going to be a little bit more aqua-y, but it's going to have, the reflection of the sky is going to be on the sand down here. So while I have it and while it's wet, I am just going to put a little there. Now, we're going to go to our watercolor. So it's the same shades I like as the blue, a little bit of green, but I'm going to go lighter here. So I'm adding some white to that. It's a little lighter all the time down on the shore. So I'm going to go across the middle because I want to get darker above and lighter below. So this color I put on, I like it. If I did not like it, it was too dark, I could just take white and go over it, or darker because it's wet. So I'm going to go with the light first. I'm taking just white on my brush, but you can see how it's really a light blue because I've got blue in my brush, which is fine. I don't want it to be stark white. I put white on my brush. I want that closest to the shore because that's where the water gets lighter. Because this darker blue we put on is wet, look, it blends just like that. I don't have to struggle or work with it. I want it a tiny bit darker up here, a little more bluer. And I don't want to, I'm just going to dry that light blue off my brush, try to get some of the dark on there. Keep my horizon line as straight as I can. I'm trying to work at this angle so you guys can see me, but it's kind of hard to get the straight line, but that's not bad. Here's our dark horizon line. Again, the paint in the middle is wet, so it's going to make it easy peasy for us to blend. I am liking the way this looks. What do you guys think? Pretty. There. Now, I want a clean brush to blend down here. I'm going to have some white waves and whatnot, and I don't want to drag it that dark in there. So let me just grab one of my other little flats. With white, I'm going to use white just as the blender because I'm also going to have a little bit of white caps down there. And I'm going to use this white paint on my brush, almost half on the blue line, half on the peach, all in one stroke, just so I can soften those two colors, starting to soften them together. Wipe off what I picked up. Maybe I'll just softly blend it. I don't want to get too much of that blue down in the sand. I'm trying to find some clean white on my icky palette over here. All right, so I'm going to, just like we did some waves here, I start with just white on the chisel edge of my brush. I pull it in, I kind of press, I pull it along. That brush is too big. Let's go to the small round brush. I'm going to go to the round. It's a little more control with the, whatever I can find. Let me get some clean white. That white is yucky. Yeah, it's just white acrylic. I have it in the big bottles because I use so much of it, but it's just the little craft paints that you can buy. And, yep, just start thin with my wave, give a little pressure, cross. I'm going to do that down here. And remember, this is a reflection, but you'd still have some of that water coming up. So I'm going to put some right over that little area where it's reflecting right there. Came out a little heavy, so I'm just taking what paint is on there and just dragging it out. I will make the waves a little more detailed. I'm going to just put the white cap parts on there, the turn over parts. And now with blue, I want it a little darker under there. I don't want to go for that lime green that I love for these paintings because it just won't match this. I'm going with just the blue, and I'm going to go underneath there where I made waves and it's just going to be a shadow. It'll probably be needed to be blended a little bit, but so that's it. I want to blend, so I'm just going to dry off the brush again. Just use the dry brush just to soften, so it's not so harsh. That's really jumping out at you. I don't want it that dark. I'm going to just soften it a little bit. And underneath any little wave, you could use that as a shadow. But I'm wiping off that blue a little bit, and it's blending with the color behind it, which I like. And just to keep it, when I have that color there, I want to keep it in other parts of the painting. So we'll just make some little waves back here, some little lines that I will blend now because it's a little bit harsh. There. I think I love that turquoisey color, and this is just really standing out too much. Let me lighten it by just taking the turquoise we used and go over. And I think that looks cool. I like that. Sand is going to be, I don't know if that sand's going to look good, that color, but let's put something on there, and because it's wet, we can adjust it on the fly. I'll go with what I sort of use. I'm going to mix it a little lighter. I think it needs to be a little grayer maybe even, but let's put it on and see what happens. Let's just put on something. And I will put a little bit of the water coming down over here too. All right, I guess I don't mind it. I don't know, what do you guys think? I'm going to put a little of that yellow in. We had a little in the sky, so I guess it'll be okay. Lighten it up with some more white. And now this little bit is bothering me because it looks a little grayish to me. Let me clean off my brush with all my wet paper towels since I spilled my water and got it all over everything. There, I think that I will just lighten that up a little bit and that will work. I might play around with that a little bit. Let me get that little color we like there. Yeah, that'll do it. Bring that lightly down. And I'm going to finish it off with a few little white waves. Just those little ripples that come up to the sand. Just white. Again, I did wash my brush because I want these to stand out a little more. So I washed my brush. I've got white paint, chisel edge, and just a little bit of this. I'm just taking on the chisel edge some little bits of that water you can hardly see coming up. I think it's good. I like it. I like it. I like it. All right, let's add our yellow sun to that the yellow moon to that nighttime sky. So I'm just using yellow and a little white because it could use a little bit of the opaqueness of whenever something's really translucent, add a little white. And I do the same exact stroke. I pop it in the middle and I spiral it out just like that. Pretty whimsical. If it's too solid for you, you can always soften it. You know, if you want it not so stiff of an edge, you can just soften it a little bit if you wanted. But I like it. And I think I just have to see this, so let me do it. Indulge me for one teeny second. I think a little yellow on the white that I put here is going to make it look like a glow at night, which is kind of cool. All right, so that's done. That one's done. This one's done. I'm just going to add a little red and blue to my reflectors up there on whatever that is called. This is very simple, but I like it, and I could almost do a little writing in the sand if I wanted to add something, but it's pretty that way, just for a little bit of almost like an early morning sky. And now we have just our beach roses and our grasses, which are super simple. I am going to use that liner brush that I showed you. If I can find it again in my bag of tricks here. I think I had it out. I have too many brushes out. You don't nearly need this many brushes. When I'm doing fine work, liner work, I always have the paint thinned down. I'm going to use this gold color that we were working with. Let's switch this back. So this gold, very watered down so that it loads the brush nice for you and you can do nice long strokes. I'm going to have some grasses coming out of the back there. I want some a little darker, some a little lighter, so I'll start with just this color, and I'm just going to bring up, it's easier for me to do this sort of thing upside down, so I start at the bottom, and again, as it grows is how you do your stroke. Start where it grows and pull it up and off the page, off the canvas. You think, oh, I can't paint a thin line like that. Here's the trick. Press down a little bit to start, and then lift that brush off your canvas right off. If you are doing your stroke and you're going along and you stop and lift, you've got a big dull edge. You want to lift it, and I want some lighter colored ones. So look at the same thing. Just press a little bit more and then lift and lift and lift. This is great for any kind of florals and landscapes and grasses. And I work better pulling that towards me and lifting for some weird reason. So you try that if you want. I'm making those grasses that have these little things on them. It's the same stroke, only shorter. I'm starting, press a little bit and pull. Press, pull, bring it out and lift. If you're lifting right off the page, you are going to get a thin line, especially if you have thinned down your paints, like I have that almost to an ink consistency more than paint. So don't get upset with yourself and say, I can't paint a thin line, until you really try and practice. Thin paint, light stroke, nice brush with a nice tip. And you can just do that. And now those are a little bit back there. If you add a little white and make some brighter, they'll stand out. So I'm going to do some of those little, what do you call? I'm terrible today with like the little ends here that you want. It looks like the little wheat kind of. So we've got some of the gold. We've got some light gold. Let's get some light greens in there. Just grasses. And some dark probably too. Let's get some dark. So I've got my yellow and green mixed. I've got that nice green I had. Very thin down. And we're going to just throw in some grasses. And again, the trick is keep the shades different. Start dark, add light, do different shades, mix up your colors, see what you get. And just so you have a nice variety. I love that lime green on top of the dark. Look at that. We're going to have more beach roses here, so we'll just do the grasses up here. And then we'll concentrate on some little roses, which are super simple because they're tiny. We're doing a tiny painting with tiny roses, so don't get bogged down in the details. Just get your round brush that you like. We're going to start with a dark maroony color and get a little lighter. Maybe not too maroony. Beach roses are pretty pink, but I'm going to take a little blue into my red, and I'm just going to place them where I want them. Remember, they're not perfectly round, so I'm making some that are sort of roundish. Can you see I'm just maybe blobbing it on? Some you only see the half of, some you see a bud. So just make some different size little maroony blobs. Again, they're given the appearance of beach roses. They're not going to be perfect specimens because you're not doing a botanical painting. You're doing a tiny little canvas for fun. As they get back towards here, if you're making them, they would be just little dots. You wouldn't see much of them. As they're closer, they're bigger. And that's that. Give it a minute to dry, and I will show you how to do the rest of the flower. We'll just recap while that's drying so that you can see what we've done. We've got the nighttime scene. We've got a daytime, which I could just pop in that. Those little guys, there's just one that's red and one that's green. And sometimes, again, you look at your paintings after. Does it need something? This is nice and soft and blendy, kind of. But that little line I did with the marker is a little bit bright. So I do just tone it down a bit with a little white so that you're seeing it off in the distance. It's not going to be that bright. You're not going to see every little line. I put a little white on there to almost obscure it a little bit. So from a distance, your eye naturally would not see all that detail. So I want you to see it, but I don't want it to be jumping out at you. So see how that just makes it a little bit more natural looking? And we did need a few little waves here that are breaking up on those rocks. I'm just going to take some of my white, and I think I've done them. You know, it's kind of coming up and just kind of crashing against here. It's barely anything, but it's nice. So all along here it sort of crashes. So I'm going to just put some white caps along there, and that's all I need. I think I'll do the same on this one while I've got it here. Just while we're waiting for that to dry anyway. There. If the moon's too bright or if the sun is too bright, you can always go in with your white again and just kind of soften that a little bit too. Okay, so those are all done. We're going to put those aside because those are done. I'm going to leave this be because I like the way that little one looks, and go back to getting these more pink because they're pink. And we just need white with our red to get a nice pink. You really can work with your primaries. You can do an awful lot with just your primaries without having every color under the sun. It's so much fun, I know, to go in and find the new colors. But if you have your primaries, you're pretty well set. I've just mixed up a pink with my white and some red. And the little ones in the background, you can just give them a little touch. They don't need much, just a little tap. And some could be just be little light pink. On top of these guys, you're just going to just blob on your pink. And you can get them as light as you want. I'm working wet and wet here. Ideally, I would like to have that darker pink underneath dried a bit. You can really pop on your colors and get them nice and light if that's the case. But I just want to show you. I don't want to keep you all day. It's a beautiful day to be at the beach. So I am going to get myself back to the beach later. And these are going to be your beach roses. And again, let them dry and you can get the brighter pink. And their little yellow centers are really kind of what the little goldy yellow centers really set them apart. And a little trick to that I will show you. Same as doing the moon. Because yellow is so transparent, you will want to paint those little centers in white first. With just this light pink I've mixed, you could put little dots here and there because they're little pieces of flowers or buds sticking out. And it just gives a nice little pattern for your eye to follow. For the centers, like I said, just blob them in white. And a good way to do a center of a flower, if you want to, is just take the back end of your brush and you can just dot that right in there. Or you could just do it with the tip of your brush, whatever works for you. I don't have my hairdryer handy because I don't know, I wasn't really planning on doing this till this morning when I was walking on the beach. So I'm going to let those dry and you will pop yellow on top of them. Needs a little something around here. We've got the nice grasses, but these guys would have some leaves. So just to do what looks like just some leaves is I'm taking, again, making my green. I'm going to get a little darker and a lighter shade like we've done, yellow and green. And on the paper, on my thing, I'll show you here. Leaves, little leaves, especially when you're not doing big detailed painting. Just blob them on. Just press your brush and then you can kind of twist it and get a little leaf shape. They are so little and random. Some of them you're not going to see because of all the shades of green I have here, but in between your flowers, maybe do this after it dries, because that way if you're hitting a pink flower, it won't matter. And this is a decorative little painting. I know those leaves are too big to be really back there, but this is decorative and whimsical. I always do the dark first and then get lighter. And in order to get lighter, again, we're going to have to add a little white because that paint would be transparent. And just add some light leaves in here and there. You see how it just makes it a little busier and a little more fun to look at? And that is going to be our beach roses. And as many leaves or as few as you want to put in there. I'm just really dotting them. If I put them somewhere like here and they really don't show up much, add a little more yellow or a little more white and you can get them to pop. I just love the look of a light something on top of a dark something. That's why I start many of my paintings on the dark side and work lighter. You can do whatever you wish. You can do more or less. You could add some smaller little grasses coming out behind them, maybe of that really lighted green color we had. You know, you could add more of this just down here. Again, less is more, but I tend to sometimes need to really make myself step away. But I think that looks nice. You can see it just is missing the yellow centers. I'll try to pop a few in just so you can get the idea, but they are wet still. Take a little gold and a little yellow. And when that white is dry, you can drop your yellow right in on top, and you've got those little yellow centers. I'm using my paint super duper thick, which is kind of fun sometimes. You know, painting with a palette knife or really thick paint. There's an extender I told you to make your paint dry slow. There's also extenders in mediums you can use to really thicken up your paint, and so that when you paint with a palette knife or something, you really see that texture. So I would just pop in some nice bright yellows after. And that is it. I don't want to keep you guys all day, but that is where I'm going to end with these guys. So Let me see. All right. All right, so I'm probably upside down again because I seem to do that every time at the end, and I am. Let me kind of go around again. You guys are great for not minding when I'm upside down and backwards and sideways and everything. But hey, thank you, Linda. Yeah, they are fun. Thank you for watching. I'm going back to the beach just to plunk myself down, and I had so much fun painting, and I love it when you guys join me because then I'm not painting all by myself. These little paintings I will maybe write Drake's Island or Wells, Maine in the corner. They're a nice little souvenir kind of thing that I'll put in the shop. So anyways, thank you guys. I will talk to you soon. Thank you, Patty. Bye. Thanks for joining me.